Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, my second backdrop finally arrived, and this is the one that I've been telling you about when we were doing the curved backdrop and everything on the layout. And it finally arrived after almost 5 months of waiting. So now we can go ahead and install the printed backdrop on the layout and finally get it finished. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, before we get started, I want to ask you to take a second to subscribe. Click on the subscribe box, and when that comes up, click on the little bell right next to it and click all. Now, the backscenes that I decided to use are made by a company called ID Backscenes in England. And the particular ones that I got are printed on, I believe it's vinyl, there's some sort of plastic. But at any rate, and they have an adhesive on the back. So you can apply these directly to your backboard or your backdrop, whatever you want to call it. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so what I want to do now is I've got a piece of plywood set up here on some sawhorses, and I've got the prints laid out. So I want to go through the process for preparing these to mount them. And then I've also pulled out one of the backboards in preparation for going ahead and mounting one of the scenes on it. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Once that one's done and complete, I'll bring out the other one and we'll get it up. So here is the full far left-hand side of the backdrop. So this is 15 inches here. I'm not going to cut the top and the bottom off. Why? Well, if you remember, on the layout, I've got a 1/2 inch recess for the foam scenery. So this will be down 1/2 inch. And the first 1/2 inch of this part of the print is going to be covered. This part will go up here at the top, but it's a little bit taller than this. And as a result, I'm going to be able to apply it to the backdrop here. And when I'm done, then I will just go ahead and trim the edge off even with the top of the backdrop itself. And that way, it's going to be a good clean cut, whereas if I cut it in advance, there's a chance that the top is not going to be exactly even and straight all the way once I get this installed, and there might be a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave it there, and all I'm going to do is cut the two ends, because the ends are what have to mate up with the other pieces. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I've got the printed edge, and you've got maybe about 1/4 inch of white outside of the printed area. So what I've got here is a nice aluminum ruler, and I'm going to place that right up against the very edge of the colored print, just so that I've got maybe, the width of the blade, basically, of color of the backdrop here that I'm actually going to cut off. And I want to do that because I want a good, clean cut, and I want it all color here, so that when I put the two pieces of the backdrop together, there's not going to be a white line down the middle between them. So you want to cut just inside of the printed margin. So I've got that set up. I can see just a hint of color on this side of my yardstick. So I'm just going to, and this is a brand new number 11 X-Acto knife blade. So I'm going to give it a good sharp cut through here twice. And there we've got it. And then if you take a look at it, you can see there's a little bit of hint of color right here. And that's what you want. You don't want a really wide one because you want your printed images to match up. But you do want to have just a bit of color because you don't want a white line between the two pieces. Okay, I've gone ahead and cut all the others in advance so that you don't have to sit there and watch me cut each one. So what I'm going to do next is bring the hardboard backdrop into position, and we're going to start the process of putting this on it. A couple of things you want to have on hand. I'm going to use a ruler like this one here to kind of hold everything in place. And what I've done here is I've rolled this out and I've matched it along the bottom and here on the side because I want a perfect match right here and right here. And I've already rolled it out the entire length so that I know that by the time I get to that far end of the layout, it's still going to be perfectly in place and aligned with the edge. So no problems there. And up here I've got, about a ½ an inch that I can work with. So I can trim up here about a ½ inch off and give me a perfect sky. So that's what I'm going to go about doing. Now, as far as getting started, what they tell you to do is take the back of it and using your fingernail to pull back on the cover, on the material like that with your thumbnail, and it will raise up the very edge of the backings. So it's sort of a clear plastic backing material. If I can hold on to it so you can see that. You can sort of see my finger through it. It's so translucent. But at any rate, and here is the actual adhesive backing of the print itself. So it's sort of I guess it's a vinyl material, I'm not sure. But it's very, very strong. They say it's very, very difficult to scuff it and mar it, and it's going to hold up fairly well, at least I hope. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see if we can't get this piece started. Because what you want to do is, you want to get about, 3 or 4 inches started and get it tacked down and start peeling back from underneath while holding the daggone print all at the same time. So I hope this is not something where you need 4 hands and 2 people, because I'm not going to have it today. Okay, so I flipped it over so I would have access to the back side of it. So let me go ahead and we'll try to raise an edge that we can start working with. And true to form, it came right up. Just trying to grip it. There we go. And I've got it started. So there we go. I'm going to pull up a little bit here along the side. And we'll flip it over and get it set in position. There we go. Now, I'm going to need to roll it this way so that I can get access to the part here underneath. There we go. Get that loose again. Like that. Then I'm going to bring it right back up, even with the bottom edge, like that, all the way. And then we're going to touch it down here at this edge here. Now it's very important to get this started perfectly, because if you don't, by the time you get to the far end, you could be off by a significant amount. There, now I've got this side to do, and I think we're okay. At least I hope so. Now, I'm going to start pulling it from the bottom like this. And I think they say to work, with about a foot of it at a time. And hold it up, and I've got a nice soft cloth. Now this is part of an old t-shirt, so it's been through the wringer many times, and it doesn't have any dust and lint free on it, so it's pretty clean. So I'm just going to use it to go ahead and smooth the print at this point to get it started. Because you want to slowly work it from left to right or right to left, from one end to the other, and press it down as you go so that you won't get any air bubbles. Okay, pull it out just a little bit further and work it down. Now they do say that if you get any air bubbles in here, one thing you can do is just poke it with a pen and then smooth it with your rag so that it will press the air out through that little hole. And then you'll be able to go ahead and proceed. Okay, all I'm doing is just rubbing it as I go to press it into place. Like this. Okay. Okay, let me move it on a little bit further. Okay, I've reached that point where we've got the curve in the backdrop. So I need to go uphill and get this down in place as I go. There we go. And we're going to work up a little bit higher now. Smoothing and holding it from the back. And finally, we're coming to the end of the roll here. And that's it. Okay, so this is the very right end of the backdrop. And so you can see I've got about another 10 inches left to cover. So what I'm going to do is take the other piece of the backdrop photo image, and I'm going to cut it so that it's just a little bit longer than I need, and then we'll only have to deal with that small section at a time, and we won't have to try to mess with the whole roll. Okay, so what I decided to do is I'm going to cut off a piece about 1 foot long because it's right at 11 inches on the end that we need. So I'm going to go with 1 foot just to cover myself. So I'm going to mark it with a pencil at 1 foot up here at the very top. You'll have to excuse my voice. I go through this every year with pollen allergies. And right now the grass pollen is very high, and that is really kicking. So right here, there's the other one. And I'm just hoping I won't lose my voice through all of this. So I'm going to cut this section off, and it's going to go on the far end of the layout, or the backdrop. And right here. And then once I'm done, any excess here, I'll just cut it off to match the very edge of the backdrop. Okay, so what I've done now is I took the curved backdrop and stood it up on one side so that I could work on this last piece here. Now, let's go ahead. We need to get a piece started up here on this edge. So again, I'm just going to take my fingernail and rub gently along that upper edge, and it will pull back a starter. And if you don't have long fingernails, get yourself some tweezers. Okay, so that's our start. Get that peeled out here, because we have to get this set just perfect. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get it. I've got a little bit of a white line right in here, but I think what I can do is I'll try to find a colored pencil or maybe a marking pen and just touch up along that line right there. It's either that or put a tree in front of it, something of that nature. Okay, so the first thing I want to do now that it's all on is I want to come along the bottom here, and anywhere that there's an overlap, I'm going to go ahead and trim that back with my X-Acto knife. And now I'm just going to run my knife blade right along that edge and cut off any excess. And it doesn't matter if this is clean or not, because it's going to be hidden anyway at the bottom. So I'm coming up, the tunnel is right here. This is that opening in the backdrop. And so I'm just going to cut right up to it, and then eventually I've got to go around it as well. I'm going to cut the opening right here in the backdrop where the tracks go out to the fiddle yard. So let's see how that works. I'm going to move over here so that you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. There we go. Okay, so that's going to be hidden nicely. So we got that cut out. Okay, I've got the backdrop set up here so that you can take a look at it. We can come on around here to the far right edge. And that's where we're going ahead and make that cut so that it's rounded. And we'll also do the whole top of the module. So let's go ahead and I'm going to start on this far right hand side to get that rounded edge. I went ahead and changed to a new knife blade, so it's fairly cheap insurance to just put a new knife blade in when it shows any sign of dulling. There we have it. Okay, so that's that nice rounded edge that we did. Now what I need to do here is start cutting and come all the way around here to remove all of that extra section along the top. Okay, it's getting a little bit hard to reach to this now, so I'm going to work from the other side. That half is done. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the other half. Okay, so this over here is the side that we just finished doing, okay? This is the left end of the module and the backdrop for it. Now right here, I've got the two backdrops lined up perfectly with one another. And if you look real close, you'll see if I match up, this is a reservoir and a dam right here, and that's lined up, and that's misaligned, and it's misaligned here at the bottom. So for some reason, they did not get a perfect matchup when they printed these. Nothing you can do about it at this point. So as far as I can see, probably the best thing and the most visible is to match up right here at the top of the hill with the skyline. And then this is not all that visible. This area here will not be a problem because it's going to be below the level of the foam, that is the baseboard. And there will be scenic materials here anyway as well. Matter of fact, this whole bottom will probably be covered with trees. So I'm mainly worried about this area up here. That makes it more difficult to match it up because I can't line it up perfectly with the bottom. It has to be about maybe a 1/16 of an inch free blue space down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get that started. I'm going to leave this on here so that I can keep an eye on that. Okay, what I decided to do is I'm going to match up these two pieces right here so that they are perfectly aligned. And then I'm going to bring these two down so that it's perfectly aligned here at the top of this hill. And then I'm going to make a mark right here so that I know exactly the level at which to place the bottom of this backdrop. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one and move it back and put it back in place to get it out of my way. I've gone ahead and I've peeled off some of the backing here on this piece that we want to do next. And remember, I've got my little mark here for where I want the bottom to be. So I need to get that set so that it is perfectly matched up with the edge and that mark. And then we'll go right on up here, bringing it right to the edge and matching it up like that. And let's see what's going on here at the bottom. It pulled loose on me. So let's get that one set right there. There we go. So that looks like a good seal, and it's perfect with the bottom where I wanted it. Okay, so I'm going to pull some more back, and we can start working it. Pull some more backing and spread it into place. Okay, I'm going to move it down a little bit further so you can follow with what I'm doing. I'm getting very close to the curve here on this end. So I'm going to pull it up some more and drape it over the backdrop where that curve is. And there we have it. It looks like the only place that I have to do any trimming on this one is from about here to here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll cut the next piece and add it. We're at the point now where right here is another opening in the backdrop, and fortunately there'll be a bridge right here to cover this. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it open like I did at the other end. Just like that. So we've got a nice little cutout where a bridge will go. And that's going to hide this end where we go through the backdrop to the fiddle yard on this end of the layout. And just like before, I'm going to go ahead and measure this section to find out how much I need to cut off. So again, that's 11 inches. So a 12-inch piece cut from this end here is going to work fine in this place. So let me get that out and we'll cut it and be ready to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get it started right here at the bottom. Turn it over and use my fingernail to peel back a little bit of that vinyl covering. I'm going to crowd in here on the camera to get this set right. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started cutting down here. I'm going to start up here this time and work that way first. And then we'll bring it down this way. One tip I want to add, it's a good idea to regularly change your blade when you're doing this because the adhesive tends to build up on the blade as you do a bunch of cutting, and then it starts to drag when you try to go through additional cutting. So you're not going to get as smooth a cut if you don't change your blade regularly. I'm going to go ahead and start trimming the whole top of this section of the backdrop, and then I'll come back and we'll put it back into place. Okay, I got everything reinstalled here on the layout. So let's take a quick look around at how the finished backdrop looks. And you can see over here on the far right end of the modules, we have the gasworks. And as you can see, I've made some progress on those, done some weathering on the roof and the like, and got some more things installed. Everything else is pretty much finished painting, and so I just need to put it together and install it. So you'll be seeing an update on the gasworks in the not too distant future. Coming on around, we have more of the distant view there of the farm country there behind the station area. And coming on around, we come around to the old mill town, and there's a dam and a small reservoir right dead center. I guess that was used to power the mill at one time. And you can see the mill buildings here as we come around. So there's a lot of in that seam that probably is not going to be visible once I get trees installed, and that's exactly where the station is going to be as well. So the station's going to cover up a lot of that lower portion and the middle section, and trees probably will cover a lot of the rest. Coming on around, you can see the bridge that covers the other hole and exit out to the fiddle yard on that end. And in the foreground will be the goods shed where you see that line of cars. So let's come back around one more time. A lot of congestion there in the station area. Got a lot of trains sitting on the tracks just to make it look nice. And of course the GWR Flying Banana there from Dapple. And one of my favorites, the Collett Goods locomotive, working the yard. So that's it for this week's video. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guy. Bye now.